Okay, we are live. Welcome to Nerd Church, the place where we get together to read through the Catholic lectionary and see what critical scholarship has to say about those passages, because we understand that reading the Bible as a Christian does not mean reading the Bible like an idiot. And to do that, we enlist the help of critical scholars who are not hostile to religion, but are very much hostile to stupidity. Um, we, of course, are Katie, Aldo, and Amanda, who just joined us. Yay!
I know what time it is. Maybe,
Yes,
maybe
yes.
not.
And and I am glad to report that I am no longer so sick that I will forget what reading we're doing this week. I had spent almost all of Sunday in bed, and then by Monday night I was like so sick that the Mesopotamian theory that illness is actually caused by demon possession was starting to seem remarkably like sensible and something that we should indeed consider, because I was bad. It was bad. I was throwing up. I was
Ooh,
in pain. It was nasty, but now I'm better. So that's good.
yay.
Yay. And yeah, although recently survived an earthquake, so that was exciting.
Oof.
Yeah, that's right.
Oof.
It was like an hour and 15 minutes ago.
That's real
But
recent.
everything is okay. I mean, I was telling Katie that unfortunately, you get used to them, and in a sense, I think that's even more dangerous because you get overconfident.
Yeah, it's really easy to become careless when there's a risk, when there's risk all the time.
That's what happens with hurricanes where I live.
Yeah.
We'll have several hurricanes, nothing happens, and then we'll have one that, washes people out of their homes.
Yeah.
They're there because, oh, it's not a big deal.
Yeah. And it's not a big deal until suddenly it is.
Yep.
Yep. And I would like to celebrate the fact that we are now up to 17 subscribers. And I hope that some of them will be able to enjoy this stream, which they will have the opportunity to watch instead of watching the Super Bowl. Because in America, at least, you're either watching the Super Bowl or you're avoiding watching the Super Bowl.
You're emphatically not watching
Watching the Super
it.
Bowl, and you're telling everyone, what's this superb owl that everyone is talking about? Although before we get started with the readings, I should mention the most hilarious theory which has come up, which is the Pope Seahawk theory.
Mhm.
Because in the 21st century, every time we have gotten a new pope, the Seattle Seahawks football team has gone to the Super Bowl.
Is that so? I haven't
Yes.
heard of that one.
Yeah, well, they just now started noticing it because, the first time it doesn't mean anything. And the second time people go, huh. And the third time everybody goes, oh, this must be a real thing.
How wonderful.
Yeah. Fortunately, we are likely to have many, many years before so this means that we have a really long time, we pray, before the Seattle Seahawks make the Super Bowl. Because because Pope Leo is in remarkably good physical health.
Mhm.
And for anyone, he plays tennis regularly. And for anyone who is worried about his eating habits, he has a Peruvian cook who is making him lots of rice and beans and healthy dishes with lots of vegetables that will keep him in good shape for many years to come.
That sounds lovely.
Yes,
I'm a little jealous.
yes, exactly. Well, if you were Pope, you too could hire a Peruvian lady to make all your.
I think there are many barriers to me becoming Pope. Just many, many barriers.
Yes. Actually, on Dapper Dinosaur's stream, there was a whole conversation about the qualifications to be Pope and whether or not Dapper as a Ceratosaurus would be qualified.
I believe we had a similar discussion at one point in
Yeah.
a different forum.
Yeah, yeah. At some point, we should take some time to actually go over the requirements to be Pope because they're actually fairly minimal.
That's what I remember, but I
Yeah.
don't even hit those.
Yeah, no, you don't. You in fact fulfill zero of the requirements for being Pope. So anyway, but we will solve that mystery on another Thursday stream because right now it's time to get into it. We are in the 5th Sunday in Ordinary Time. We have one more Sunday in Ordinary Time to go, and then we are in Lent. But before it's time for us to think about our lives and think about our choices, we are continuing the speed run through Jesus's ministry in the Gospels, and we have some really great readings from Isaiah coming up.
We don't have another Sunday.
Yeah, there is the 15th.
Isn't Ash Wednesday Wednesday?
No, Ash Wednesday is the 18th. Yeah, Ash Wednesday is the 18th. There's this Sunday, next week is the last Sunday in Ordinary Time, then Ash Wednesday is on the
18th. I'm bad at time. Just really, really wrecking it lately.
Yeah, time. What is time? We don't even know.
I've been really bad at it all day.
Yeah. On the other hand, I'm discovering that a lot of Catholic metaphysics basically hinges on time. What is time really?
Well, I don't know clearly.
Exactly. So, we're in good shape. So anyway, let's get started with Isaiah. Aldo, if you'll do the honors.
Sure. Today's reading is Isaiah 58, 7 through 10. Thus says the Lord, share your bread with the hungry, shelter the oppressed and the homeless, clothe the naked when you see them, and do not turn your back on your own. Then your light shall break forth like the dawn, and your wound shall quickly be healed. Your vindication shall go before you, and the glory of the Lord shall be your rear guard. Then you shall call, and the Lord will answer. You shall cry for help, and he will say, here I am. If you remove from your midst oppression, false accusation, and malicious speech, if you bestow your bread on the hungry and satisfy the afflicted, then light shall rise for you in the darkness, and the gloom shall become for you like midday.
And then the psalm?
The psalm is Psalm 112, verses 4 through 9. Light shines through the darkness for the upright. He is gracious and merciful and just. Well for the man who is gracious and lends, who conducts his affairs with justice. He shall never be moved. The just one shall be in everlasting remembrance. An evil report he shall not fear. His heart is firm, trusting in the Lord. His heart is steadfast, he shall not fear. Lavishly he gives to the poor. His justice shall endure forever. His horn shall be exalted in glory.
Okay, and then we have 1 Corinthians 2, 1 through 5.
When I came to you, brothers and sisters, proclaiming the mystery of God, I did not come with sublimity of words or of wisdom, for I resolved to know nothing while I was with you, except Jesus Christ and him crucified. I came to you in weakness and fear and much trembling, and my message and my proclamation were not with persuasive words of wisdom, but with a demonstration of spirit and power, so that your faith might rest not on human wisdom, but on the power of God.
Okay. And I think I'll take the gospel if that's okay. Okay. This is Matthew 5, 13 through 16. Jesus said to his disciples, "You are the salt of the earth, but if salt loses its taste, with what can it be seasoned? It is no longer good for anything but to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world. A city set on a mountain cannot be hidden, nor do they light a lamp and then put it under a bushel basket. It is set on a lampstand, where it gives light to all the house. Just so your light must shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your heavenly Father." Okay, so I guess the first thing that we can say, looking at all of these kind of in combination, is that we're very much kind of looking at, you know, what does the kingdom of God look like and how do we get there, right? And I think that, this is kind of a case where the Old Testament reading and the gospel are put in conversation with each other really well, because and this is and the Old Testament passage is one where I think the plain reading of the text is actually the one that you should really go with, because it's like, what does justice look like? Justice looks like, honesty and taking care of the poor and being good to each other and not talking behind people's backs. That's what justice looks like. And then the gospel says, okay, well, how do you get there? You get there by doing the work, right? And, and I think that that's just a really good, really human message. And one thing that I kind of wanted to talk about a little bit with biblical interpretation, and I think that this is something that we've all kind of had to deal with just in our own reading, is kind of what you do with passages like this, where you're trying to figure out is the meaning, is it really that obvious, or is there something that I'm not quite picking up here? And that's one of those things that can be really hard. Like we were talking about last week, because I was very sick, forgot that Salt of the Earth was on this week's reading, is that if it's a weird metaphor and it's something that strikes you as weird, so you kind of have to go a little bit deeper and investigate it, and you find out, oh, this is a culture where salt, the thing that you put on your food, can have impurities in it that need to be removed, right? So therefore, it's possible to go, oh, this is something that doesn't quite make sense. I'm going to do a little bit more research and find out how to make sense of it, right? But I think at the same time, it's not well, at the same time, you should be looking out for, does this make sense? You shouldn't just it's also important to not just assume that nothing in the Bible is going to make sense, right? That you can't, as like an ordinary person, go, oh, why would you put a lampstand under a bushel basket? Because I've seen recently like this really bad Protestant apologist who was explaining, well, like back then, a lot of times you might have like two families living in the same house. And if one family was mad at the other, they'd put their lamp under a basket so that they would have light, but the other family that was like in the same room wouldn't have. And it's like, no, you don't.
The
Yeah,
text actually says you wouldn't do that.
right.
Like that would be weird.
Yeah,
That's like literally what the text says.
yeah. And I think, and I think that that's something that you kind of get better at as you read through the book seriously, with commentary or with, checking critical scholarship or with, asking, people in your community or whatever, just like, does this make any sense? And if somebody, and if the explanation turns into this like weird just so story about, like a camel getting down on its knees and wiggling its way through a gate, which is, the classic explanation for it's easier for the camel to get through the eye of a needle. It's like,
Oh, yeah.
yeah. And it's like, no, and
It can be just a needle and a camel.
it can be just a needle and a camel. Exactly. Okay, but and we will get to the needle and the camel. So before we totally go off on the needle and the camel, Aldo, why don't we get started with Isaiah?
Sure. So, I was thinking of, excuse me. I was thinking about this reading in a sense that, of course, there's this recurring prophetic critique showing up again and again throughout the book of Isaiah. So what the author is focusing on is, acts of loving kindness and, being altruistic to the rest of the people. And it shows in very, very simple and practical ways, in contrast to, for example, the sacrifices in the temple. And I think that that is in some way the message from Isaiah. So if you're not part of the temple hierarchy, what should you do to, to be in good terms with God? And it boils down to these very simple actions like sharing your bread with the hungry, shelter the oppressed and the homeless. And then, of course, the results are just outstanding. Your light shall break forth like the dawn. The glory of the Lord shall be your rear guard. So it is, in a sense, it's encouraging people to, to do all these little acts of kindness to others, and they guarantee them to, to get a better life and to get this kind of spiritual illumination. And perhaps even we have been talking about light in different passages of Isaiah and the Hebrew Bible. And some of them, light seems to refer to this political independence from oppressing kingdoms. And in this case, it refers to just being showing compassion to others. And as we shall see in the gospel reading, it refers either to Jesus or to people who are, the light is also a symbol for life.
Right.
And then the psalm continues with more or less the same idea, in the sense of playing with this metaphor of light and darkness, where people become the light. Sorry, and moral quality in this sense is equated to light. And whenever you are in good terms with God through good actions, you have nothing to fear. And I think that's pretty much the message which Isaiah and the Psalms reading are trying to communicate to us.
Yes. And the other thing that I did want to note is that this psalm is actually a repeat. We've had it already in this liturgical year. So just because I think it's kind of interesting to keep track of the things that keep showing up over and over again, because obviously those are the ones that are going to get into people's heads. Because if we're assuming someone who's, say, going to church on a fairly regular basis, by the time so it's by the time you get through, because that's one thing I'm sort of interested in, is like, what are the passages that you will have heard over and over and over and over again that are really getting drilled into people's heads? Because I think that tells us a lot kind of about what the lectionary is meant to do in terms of the ideas that are trying to be put into people's heads. And then, of course, we have this letter from Paul to the Corinthians.
Can I make a comment about Isaiah 58 first?
Yes, please.
And I think this is important, and like a thing that, which is because Isaiah 58, we've been in Isaiah for a hot minute.
Yeah.
But the today's passage talks about, I didn't ask for these sacrifices, I want you to do this. And I think it's important to note that what they're being asked to do, and if we're applying it to ourselves, being asked to do is be in community with people who need you, who you might think are lesser, who can do nothing for you, instead of the easier thing, which was get up and go to church today.
Yeah.
Like, it didn't really cost me anything to be at church. Yeah, it was at 8 a.m., but like, not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
I got dressed, I went, no biggie. But it's asking you to do something much more difficult and much more community oriented. And community oriented for people who, are naked and hungry.
Yeah.
Who can do nothing for you.
Yeah. Well, and actually, I should mention, at least in my diocese, this was the weekend where they had the Bishop's Appeal, which was basically there's a fund that the diocese has that is donations that are given for various charitable purposes. Like there's a program in Phoenix, there's a jobs program in Phoenix called St. Joseph the Worker, that provides support and job training for people who are homeless, or in a precarious situation, and who need help finding a job or with job training. And they connect people with like apprenticeship programs for like plumbing and electrical work, and good paying jobs that you can actually earn a living at doing. And then also provide the material support for the young men who are studying for seminary. are two of the big things that they do, as well as providing money for St. Vincent de Paul, which has branches in all of the churches, right? So, that was a really, it was, I thought really nice that, on a day that we're like talking about, okay, what do you do? They're like, hey,
Something to do.
hey, something to do. Like, and I should mention that, my church, also has like a constant donation barrel that you can bring food in for the parish food pantry. That's
Nice.
Yeah, that's just kind of always there. And and again, I'm not saying this in a, like, wow, we're so based, we're so awesome, we're so great. I'm saying this in a way that, like, I sincerely feel like my church is doing like what is being asked, right? Like we're doing the
At least actually trying.
right, like we are doing the like bare minimum that you can do to say that we are making an honest, good faith effort to take care of the poor in our community to the best of our ability. And but at the same time, that's not nothing. And there are, families who have a place to live and who have the lights on because of that. And again, if ever, and I think that that's kind of the message of this, of all of these readings, is just kind of like, if everybody just did the bare minimum.
Found somebody who needs them.
Yeah, exactly. Or
and does what's needed.
Yeah.
You don't have to do everybody. Just find one person. Start there.
Exactly. And if make sure that the people in your house have enough food. And if the people in your house don't have enough food, make sure your neighbors don't have enough food. And if your neighbors don't have enough food, then look at the people in the next, down the street. And you keep going until eventually everybody has enough food. It's not a bad idea. Maybe we should try it. I don't know.
Yeah, that's and that's exactly the sense of the reading from Isaiah. So he's just asking for very little things, to spare a piece of bread, to spare some clothes to people. It isn't just going out of your way, or even going the proverbial extra mile for others, but just doing these little actions which make a difference.
Yes, exactly so. And yeah, so I will just quickly mention with Paul, Amanda's favorite.
Hey, I like my men difficult, okay?
Everybody, everybody needs somebody to love them, and I'm glad that Paul has you.
Hey, at least I don't love him like those weird Theo bros do, okay?
Yeah.
I have a much more sensible love for him.
Yeah. I would like to point out that this particular point from Paul is actually really important in like historical Jesus studies, because it actually mentions the crucifixion. Because one of the things that will come up a lot is like, because Paul talks about the resurrection a lot, and he doesn't talk about Jesus's life and ministry a whole lot, right? Which of course, like the Jesus mythicist people, who Yeah. Jesus mythicism, just briefly, are the people who think that Paul just made up Jesus for funsies, and then like told people about it, and then later on people made up stories about how this was a historical guy. Except of course for the people who think that Paul was made up. You can kind of keep mythicism running like for I actually haven't bothered to find out like what's the like latest point that all of the mythicists agree that like this person actually existed. Like I kind of wonder if you could
Do
find
any of us?
what, yeah.
Do any of us?
Well, I kind of wonder, like, are there like St. Augustine mythicists running around?
I just don't know why you would make up a gremlin like Paul.
Right.
Like, like why would you do that?
Yeah, exactly.
I say that with love.
Yes.
But you have a great point because as far as I'm concerned, none of the, any people discussing Jesus, whether it is Celsus or it's, Porphyry or all these authors who were trying to disprove Christianity, they never denied the existence of Jesus. So even its enemies, even Christianity's enemies were not thinking about debunking a Christianity because Jesus was non-existent or was a fictional character, but because of the claims of the religion itself, not the character.
Exactly. And it's worth pointing out, as Aldo did, that you have figures like Celsus and Porphyry, um, who like those guys went hard against Christianity. Like anything that you could say to criticize to criticize the behavior of Christians, the method of the ways that Christians were engaging with the Hebrew Bible, the way that they thought salvation worked, anything about the movement that could be criticized, they did. And one of the things that they actually went really, really hard on was the fact that, like, you think God was a condemned criminal, right? Like Jesus got crucified. Yo, why would God do that? This makes no sense. Excuse me, I need to turn on the light real quick. Okay. So the point is, and also I would like to point out for any of our non-Christian or non-religious viewers that believing that there was a dude who lived in first century Judea, preached a bunch of stuff, got himself crucified, and then his followers, rather than going, well, I guess that wasn't the Messiah after all, and moving on to the next, guy who was running around saying that the end was nigh. Believing that that guy existed does not mean that you have to believe that he was God. It just means that you have to believe that there was a dude who was preaching a new religion. And, as we know, dudes get
Dudes be
ideas.
preaching.
Yeah, exactly. Dudes be preaching. Like, people decide that there should be a new religion and try to get people to go along with them on a fairly regular basis. It's just that we only hear about the ones that it's survivorship bias, right? We know about the one Messiah whose followers, like, somehow against all odds managed to keep their movement going, as opposed to the ones that didn't. Why was that? Well, the Christian example, the Christian answer to that is, of course, well, our guy was right. And that was why Christianity, eventually ends up choking out the Roman Empire. But
Did it though?
well,
Or is it the other way around?
yeah. Well, okay.
But not in the way that they intended in the first place.
Yeah. We can talk about that. Like, I think that it's fair to say that if we want to cast human history as a giant battle between God and empire, we at the very least have to admit that sometimes that fight between God and empire is taking place within the church as much as it is taking place outside of the church. And that, yeah, so that's how it goes. But anyway, but the point though is that this little line in there, for I resolved to know nothing while I was with you except Jesus Christ and him crucified, is like kind of the point that people will kind of bracket and go, okay, no matter what else was going on, Paul was aware of Jesus as a historical person who lived and was crucified. And that this idea of the crucifixion then probably happened because it was such a problem later on, and would have been a problem at the time. And the fact that it gets in and stays in means that it's more than likely that this is a real historical event that actually happened, because there's no good reason to have made it up. And as we were sort of alluding to, there were a lot of reasons not to make it up, right? I mean, having the leader of your movement, let alone your God, get convicted of we'll talk about what he got convicted of closer to Easter, and crucified, is kind of embarrassing.
Yeah. Why would you pick a loser?
Exactly.
Why are you staying here?
Right. And and of course the answer to that is, well, God likes losers. Right.
Yeah.
And as somebody who has been kind of a loser at times, that can be a comforting thought.
Definitely.
God at least understands failure.
And even for example, it turns the Bible also turns around the the tables with some characters. So for example, he has King David, he has Solomon, and they are all kind of being humbled by God. So you have this leveling of the underdog comes up, and the person in power comes down a little. So it's kind of a literary trope to deliver a message where God is in control outside of the regular circumstances, or trying to explain how these kind of things happen, right?
Yeah. Well, and it's also interesting that you're bringing up David because there's a sense in which, as long as David is this, humble shepherd who's, working for his dad, helping out his brothers, defending the flocks, doing what he needs to do when the Philistines attack, that like David, he's doing fine. He's finding favor in the sight of the Lord. And then when he gains power and becomes king, that's when everything goes to crap. And I think that, perhaps we see an echo of this, from Paul, where he's saying, I'm not great, right? I'm not great. You're not great. The message is great, right? Because because maybe in Paul's mind, as long as it's about doing the work and it's about other people and it's about God, then he's less tempted to go, oh, look at me. I'm Paul. I'm so great. Jesus loves me most of all. I'm God's special boy. Because that's when you get all up into your head and you get into this like power trip and, you start, well, that's when you get Paul telling women to sit down and shut up because they make him mad.
Mhm.
Well,
And
Amanda might want to push back on that a little, but
Just a little bit. I think actually what's the most interesting thing about uh this piece in First Corinthians, because he's talking about how, like, it's not really about me, is he's so obviously telling us, like, this is the important bit, and this is me working out the rest of it. I'm trying, I'm doing my best. And like people just like, well, he said it, so that's how that works.
yeah,
You're like, you not listen to this man?
right. Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's like everybody's like, no, we have to believe Paul absolutely about everything because Paul has all the answers. And
And he tells us he tells us he knows he's a gremlin. He
yeah,
knows. He knows, and he tells us that. Treat him like he's a gremlin, and it'll be okay.
yeah. Well, isn't there? I mean, there's even one point where Paul's like, "Yeah, I'm just like this weird, little, short, ugly dude." Like,
Well, he constantly talks about being the worst of all sinners, like the least
yeah,
of it. And you're like, take him at his word. It's
yeah,
really that's where we need to be at. Like, he's a sinner mucking it up with the rest of us. It's okay.
yeah,
He, and you know, I that's I find Paul comforting. Okay. He's a disaster. I'm a disaster. It's all good.
yeah,
We're doing our best. It's not great.
yeah. I don't know. I guess I just spent too long. I think really my problem is that I kind of came up in the era of like angry second wave feminist scholarship, where the way that people who were interested in finding a way to be Christian um chose to like blame everything that they didn't like on Paul. Like,
Oh no,
yeah,
I
yeah,
totally get it. I
yeah,
mean, I have spent time consuming various things from queer theology, and um there is such a push to just shove him out
yeah,
because everything, And it's a little throw the baby out with bathwater, personally. I think you just have to engage with him,
Yeah.
and you have to engage with what's there and why did we all keep this? Like, what is going on?
Because I
Um,
mean, there are Protestants, I believe, who have started to advocate for like, well, what if we reopen the canon and like get rid of Paul?
oh, I have not heard of that,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
you you lose so much theologizing though.
yeah. Well, and I think that's kind of and I think that's kind of the point that I have arrived at is also as I've come to understand that like the power of Paul's visionary experience, right? And that the fact that Paul becomes an apostle not because not because he knows Jesus in life, but because he comes to Christianity as a convert who has had a vision means in a sense that like all Christian mystics and all Christians who are interested in like mysticism and like sort of any kind of like meditative practice or anything like that in some sense are living downstream from Paul because in a lot of ways like Paul is the one who makes sure that I had a vision and Jesus talked to me and this is what he said is not something that any that the church, whether we're talking about the Catholic Church or any other church, is something that the institution can dismiss out of hand because it came from Paul. And because of that, I think that we have to acknowledge, we're here in a lot of ways, like, you know, without Paul, there's no Francis of Assisi. Without Paul, there's no Therese of Lisieux.
Or
Without,
Catherine of Siena or
yeah,
Hildegard.
yeah, or Hildegard, right? Like we are all, it's like they're all Paul's kids in a very real way. And I think that, and that was something that didn't really occur to me until I had the very good fortune to take Justin Sledge's course over on the Esoterica channel on Merkaba mysticism. Because one of the things that he wants to argue Paul is that Paul's vision sort of maps onto what we later know about this particular school of Jewish mysticism. And I'm not going to even attempt to summarize his argument. Everybody should just go to Esoterica, find the lecture on Paul, watch it, and it will like genuinely, if you have a problem with Paul, it will help you understand that as much as people have had to fight with Paul over the years, that including his perspective in Christianity kind of really does give something to the tradition.
Yeah. Well, I think that's what Paul expects
Mm-hmm.
too. I mean, he comes from a place and a tradition where arguments and dissent and disagreement are ways of working through and working towards. So just taking him at his word, I feel is a disservice to ourselves, but also to Paul. We are treating him not as he was, as a dude, a little weird gremlin man
Mhm.
thinking through his stuff. I mean, just
Yeah. Well, and I
argue
mean,
with Paul. It's fine. You're okay.
yeah, exactly. And I mean, and I'm sure we'll probably get another run at this, as we get into Acts and stuff. But if you look at even the relationship between Peter and Paul, right? I mean, okay, yes, as Catholics, Aldo and I had it drilled into our heads from birth. Peter was the first pope.
Mhm.
The Catholic Church was founded upon the
Right.
rock of Peter, right? But okay, let's talk about St. Peter's papacy for a minute, right?
I know nothing about it,
Oh,
so
okay. Okay,
all news to me.
okay. Well, you know what Peter was doing in Acts, right? But you've read Acts, right?
Yes,
Okay.
you asked me, I know, and I can't think of a single thing he was doing, but I have
He
read
was
Acts.
doing stuff,
You
right?
will
Right, right,
bring up stuff, yeah.
right. But my point though is simply that, Peter was not sitting there like running the show with no, telling people, okay, no, you do this. This is what we're doing. Paul, no, you can't go there and preach to those people. You have to, what I say about keeping what I say about keeping kosher goes. You have to do it, or I'm kicking you out of the movement, right?
Hmm.
Peter doesn't have that kind of power, right? So Paul isn't imagining a pope who can say yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, right? Without consulting anyone, without not Paul isn't imagining a king, right? He's not imagining a monarch. He's not imagining like the supreme emperor of Christianity, right? It's like Peter's a dude that he has to listen to. Paul is a dude that Peter has to listen to, whether he wants to listen to him or not, right? But it's this very messy, arguing kind of religion. So I think that you're on to something there, definitely, that like if Paul knew that what Paul was saying was going to be applied dogmatically in all situations, he would
I
be
think,
kind of going like,
yeah.
why?
Yeah, I really do think so. I mean, yeah,
Yeah,
people always do the argument that he's writing a letter to the church, and so he has no concept that, it's going to end up as scripture or whatever, which I guess is true. But also, I think he really just is, it's a conversation.
right.
Um, I mean, except for the, once where he's fussing people out for going astray.
Yeah.
Sometimes we need a Paul
Big,
for that.
but anyway, so we're talking. So we're so is there anything else that we need to say about Paul?
Um, Not today. I'm sure he'll come back up.
Okay. Yeah. So we're
I have a feeling he comes up regularly.
so anyway. So we're moving on to Matthew. This is Matthew. Last week ended with 5:12. This week picks up with 5:13. So it's literally the same passage. Um, which is why they kind of run together. And we had a whole long disquisition in last week's episode about salt and salt history, which I encourage people to catch up with. But the short version is that in this time and place, salt is not chemically pure. And you can have salt that becomes less salty. Well, what happens when that salt becomes less salty? It needs to be purified, generally by putting it in water, heating it up, and then recrystallizing it. Um, or you can just toss it out, right? And I think that and I think that people have a tendency to sort of fixate on the, thrown out and trampled underfoot thing. Because I think that a lot of Christian traditions tend to be like very into the whole, if you don't do what you're supposed to do, you're going to be punished kind of thing. When I think that the message that we're more getting here is, yes, you have to act, you have to do something. You can't just sit there, right? It's like you have a lamp. You don't hide the lamp. You put the lamp up where people can see the dang lamp, right? Which does require some effort, but it also requires just people, doing things that they know are going to make the world a little bit better.
Well, these are very common things. I think that's the other thing.
Yeah.
Salt is, I mean, it was expensive, but it was a common thing. Everybody has to have salt. You have to have salt to exist.
Like physically to live, you
Yeah.
have to have salt.
If you don't get any salt, you will die. And without light, you you to a degree can't live either.
Right? Yeah.
Like, I mean, he's saying lamp, but like even without lamps of any kind, without fire, you can't
Yeah.
make it to the bathroom in the middle of the night in an emergency, and that could be bad for you. You
Right.
can't, do lots of things.
Right. Well, and also, it's worth thinking about too that like these are the houses of this time, right? Are, sort of these little square buildings that have a door and don't really have necessarily much of a window opening, right? Because, glass exists, but the
Not for
technology
windows.
to make window glass is hundreds of years in the future, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, you might have a few small windows. So as soon as it starts to get dark, it gets real dark real fast. And as modern people who live with electric lights, it can be, I think it's kind of hard for us to picture a world in which it gets dark. And even in town, it's can be like almost pitch black. And, so lamps like that are going to be absolutely necessary. And indeed, you find like in archaeology, you find oil lamps like all over the place of, all descriptions and price points because
Everybody's got one.
everybody, like literally everybody, has got one. And of course, what are the lamps burning? Generally, they're burning, at this point, they're burning olive oil, which, if you're rich, you can get nice, new, clean olive oil. And probably if you're poor, you're probably using your leftover cooking oil. Just a hunch, because that's what my grandma would have done in that situation, right? It's like,
Yes, definitely.
yeah, it's like you're going to be using the leftover cooking oil because that's what you got.
Because you're not throwing it away.
Right. You're not throwing it away. No. We all know you don't throw away grease.
No, and if it's not too bad, you save it for the next fry anyway.
Yes,
I
exactly.
say this as a person with a jar of oil in my cabinet that has been used but not used too much.
Yeah, I say this as someone with a jar of bacon grease in the refrigerator. Well, because you cook bacon and you get a lot of fat from it, right? And then you pour it off and then you use it to cook eggs and things. And
Waste not, want not.
exactly.
That's biblical, right?
Exactly. Well, possibly not the jar of bacon grease.
Well,
You know, it's the spirit that counts.
well, it's good stewardship. That's what it is.
Yeah, yeah,
Good stewardship.
yeah. Yeah. But anyway, but the point is it's like, so we have this, so we're closing out ordinary time, and we just have this, really nice message about like how to make the world a better place. And that's kind of, all I have to say right now, except that, that's kind of thing that I feel like people need to think about right now.
Definitely.
So, did anybody have any closing thoughts, or can we move on to the parish announcements?
I just want to mention something about the symbolism of salt and the lamp.
Yes, please.
So I was thinking about the meaning of salt in the Hebrew Bible, and it's usually something used to sanctify. So you have to
Oh.
put salt into some of the sacrifices.
Mm-hmm.
And in some sense, it's there's an obscure practice mentioned in I can't remember right now if it's either in Isaiah or Ezekiel, where they mention a person being washed with water and then purified with salt.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess kind of the symbolism this passage from Matthew is trying to tell us is that in some way people who are who are following the message of Jesus are trying to, in some sense, they sanctify the rest of the earth, or sanctify, or they give sense to the actions they perform because of understanding the message of Jesus,
Oh,
instead of
that's
just
cool.
that's the idea. That's the what I kind of grasped when looking up. Perhaps I'm just stretching it
No, actually,
too much.
I think that that's actually so I think that that's definitely something that's in there,
Mhm.
because one of the things that I've noticed already with Matthew is Matthew seems to have this project of like redefining sacrifice and redefining what it means to perform sacrifice and to be sacrificed and all that kind of thing. For example, we had a little while ago Jesus saying, John the Baptist saying about Jesus, this is the Lamb of God, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now we've got the salt that is also connected to that, right? And I think that you might be onto something there, that this passage might be another one that kind of fits in neatly to this Matthean project of sort of reworking and redefining sacrifice. Because ultimately, that's one of the things that Matthew, of course, understands Jesus to have done, is to get rid of the need for sacrifice in the temple, right? So that ultimately Matthew can even say the fact that we don't have a temple anymore isn't a big deal because we have something else.
Right.
And it would make sense that he's sort of putting little pieces of that kind of throughout all of the passages that he is sort of picking out. But yeah, thank you. That's something that we'll have to think about and kind of keep an eye on.
Right. It was something I came up just a couple of minutes ago, but
Yeah,
perhaps that's the idea, that salt in this sense is some sort of intention, that the intention behind the act. If people do not have that intention, then the salt does not have any taste.
yeah. It'll, or just that, and then also the idea that, the salt has to be pure, or if it's not already pure, it has to be purified so that it can be used, right?
Definitely, yes.
Um,
And I had this other insight into the light. There's this saying in the book of Proverbs where they talk about the commandment as a lamp and the Torah as light. So if a person is hiding from or is perhaps refusing to fulfill a commandment, and by hiding by hiding under this basket, then there's no use to that person in that sense.
yeah, that's a very good point. Okay, and I think that's a good place to close. I'd like to, obviously this is Nerd Church, so we have to have parish announcements. Our first announcement is that on Thursday, we will be once again getting together with Dapper Dinosaur to discuss some incredibly foolish things being said by some incredibly foolish Catholics when they decided it was a great idea to give Tom Homan the Protector of America Award. And we're going to just yell at them for a little while and explain to them why they're wrong, because somebody needs to. And frankly, we are one of the few Catholic YouTube channels that's small enough that we could do so without dignifying them by our response. I think we would have to discuss, like, how many subscribers would we have to get up to before they would be beneath us. I'm pretty sure we would have to break like at least 1,000 subs. So we've got like a long time.
Oh, we're fine.
Yeah, we're fine. We can continue to go after the low hanging fruit for a good long while, as the saying goes.
What time is that? We're struggling with the struggle bus with time today.
Okay. That will be happening at that will be happening at the same time, which is, I believe, 5:30 Eastern Standard Time, which is 3:30 p.m. Mountain for now.
I have it in my little book.
Yeah, when daylight savings time starts, we're going to have to go through this all over again.
I'm gonna check my World Time Buddy website.
Okay. And then on Monday, I'm not sure when the episode will be airing, but on Monday, we will have the opportunity to talk to Dr. Shelley Rubenovich, who is a scholar of folk Catholicism, Santeria, Voodoo, modern neo-paganism, and just a bunch of really cool stuff. A very gracious and knowledgeable lady who did her PhD thesis on nichitos, which are little shrines, domestic shrines to the Virgin Mary, that will be put up. And she was looking at ones in Tucson, in the northeastern US, and in Quebec in Canada. So that will be tremendously exciting. And we will be airing that as soon as we get that recorded and edited. And then, of course, next week we will be back at our usual time, 4 p.m. Mountain, 6 p.m. Eastern, and what time zone are you in, Aldo? Because I know you're not actually in Central, but
It's I'm not sure how it's Greenwich Meridian time -6.
yeah, okay.
So
Yeah.
then
So
yeah.
anyway, so Central Time, whatever that is, an hour before that Pacific. So anyway, but 4 p.m. Mountain, that's what I remember because that's my time zone. Be here on Sunday for the 6th Sunday in Ordinary Time, and we will see you then. Bye.